The news got even better for Florida State on Monday afternoon as Michael Langston, our senior recruiting analyst at Warchant.com, you were privy to a little bit of news that's on the bottom of the screen. The number one tight end in the industry, the 2024 recruiting class, Landen Thomas, Michael, has flipped from the Georgia Bulldogs to the Florida State Seminoles. This is monumental news, sir.
Yeah, massive day. I told people on the site I don't get up at 6 a.m. for much, but a 5-star or a big commitment for FSU, I'll certainly do that. Made my way over to Moultrie, got a lot of exclusive stuff from Landon. Kind of discussed everything. I think people can watch it. There are videos out. The story's also out of why he picked FSU, and then we'll have some more stuff off Landon's commitment with his coach later, Sean Calhoun, who was phenomenal today. It's just massive news, and it tells you where this program is going under Mike Norvell with all these different bits of good news. We heard a lot of positive stuff with the spring game, and then now this makes it real, where you're really getting somebody from a coveted top team and flipping them. This is a big deal, and not only that, it's a big deal for the position because of you have Jaheim Bell, but you're still building that tight end room, and to get somebody this elite is just incredible recruiting momentum for FSU.
So, Michael, I saw in the interview, and that full video is from earlier, I believe, on Monday, to be specific. But you got up
Yes.
in the car, you went up, you spoke to the prospect, and Landen Thomas is 6'4", 230 pounds. This is a prototypical guy. We'll take a look at some of his film in a second, some of his highlights. But you knew about this a while back, and this has been a long-established relationship for Florida State. What put FSU over the top? There's a full backstory that members of warchant.com can get on the site, on the premium recruiting board. But what put Florida State over the top with this prospect? Was it wins? Was it the tight end transfers that have come in and proved that they could be a big part of the offense in spring? Where would you go in assigning the reason that this guy went from Georgia to Florida State?
I think ultimately it was the product, because I think Landon was always sold on FSU. He even told me, like, when he first visited in January, March, that man, I forgot how much I love it here, and so he really feels comfortable with the staff. I think the staff has a lot to do with it too. The relationships, the comfort level. He visited FSU in March. He was only supposed to visit there for an hour and a half. He ended up staying 8 hours, and only an hour of it was visit stuff. The rest of it was just chilling, being around these people, the players, the coaches. And I think he just there was just something unique and special about FSU when he was on there. And I won't give everything away from my backstory because people can go read it. But he did tell me, like, I knew kind of in March that I was going there. So he already made his mind up that was where he's going. And I think the final few visits kind of finished it off. But there's a lot of details and intel in there. But I think it tells you a lot about the way he felt about FSU. But they need a reason to give him their product on the field. Certainly that win against LSU got it cranked up, and then just the season in general, seeing what they do, and then also seeing, I think Jaheim Bell was a big part of it too. He doesn't know Jaheim personally, even though they're both from South Georgia. He sees kind of what Jaheim's going to do in that offense, and it's like when you watch Jaheim, there's no way that you aren't excited, because I think Landon's the same way as far as just his game breaking and playmaking ability as a big either a big receiver or a tight end. And I compare I kind of compare some of his games when they line him up wide out, kind of what they do with Johnny at FSU. So, and he kind of said the same thing today when we met. So I think it was a combination of several things. One, the product was a big deal, but also it was what FSU is doing with the tight end position. I think it was a mixture of all those things. But either way, I think the feelings about FSU weren't really something FSU had to increase, because they stayed consistent with him. But I think a lot of it was, if you're looking for new things, it was the product and just the way he connects with this FSU staff. He doesn't talk to Coach Atkins too much compared to other coaches, but he said, man, that guy's hilarious. He loves being around him. But there's a comfort level where, I mean, he said it point blank and very easily. He said, you know what, Mike, I feel at home when I'm here. I feel like I can be my own person and be who I am when I'm here with these guys. And not sure he gets that any other place. It didn't feel like it, but I think that was one of the main factors as well.
So, Michael, you touched on a few of the players that are on campus for Florida State participating, obviously in spring, playing in the 2023 season. Florida State has a bevy of options at tight end with Jaheim
Hmm.
Bell and Kyle Morlock and Biscuit, Marquise Douglas. Those are
Yep.
three very different style of players, but they're all listed as tight ends. You also brought up the name Johnny Wilson. So, if you could break down, and folks have been watching these clips for several minutes now, where does Landen Thomas fit in the grand scheme of guys that are on Florida State's roster? If you had to compare him to somebody on the roster currently, how is his game molded?
I don't think he's like anybody else that's on their roster because I think he's a mixture of a lot of them. I think I think with Jaheim, he's playmaking ability as far as a receiver. That's what Jaheim does. Jaheim's so good after the catch, but the difference with him and Jaheim is he's size. He's got more size and height as far as what he can do. Um, and he's very good blocker. Like I mean, we haven't talked about that. I mean, we talked today. I'm like, this kid gets just as excited about catching a football as he does block. He really enjoys it. He covets it. He wants it. He actually gets more excited, I think, blocking for guys than he does, the big plays we see consistently on these highlights. So I think he's kind of a mixture of those guys. I think with Morlock, he has kind of catch radius that Morlock has, and then with Jaheim, he has, people can see in these clips, big time speed for a big guy. That I mean, he moves fast for a big guy, and then I think if you combine the other guys like Marquiston, power. He has the
Yep.
power of what Marquiston has. So I think he's a mixture of all three of those guys together. Be honest, like I cannot think of a tight end that FSU has had in a very long time that does the things that Landon does. Like they've had some really good ones. Nick O'Leary was phenomenal for them. That was kind of a different wave. I don't think they've had one that has the combination of the 6'3.5", 6'4", 6'4" height and have that speed and power and dynamic of play making ability. So I think you kind of get the best of both worlds with Landon. That's why he's a 5-star and the number 21 best player in the country because he's very elite and certainly a guy that I think you can utilize in so many different ways. You can line this guy up at receiver and you feel really good because he's such a effective playmaker at that spot. And even I was talking to Colquitt coach, Sean Calhoun, and he was like, we're just going to line him up wherever we're going to get him the ball. But he also emphasized how Landon loves physicality, and Landon kind of reiterated that to me as well. So I don't think he's just one of those, like, even though he is so good as a receiver, I don't think he's one of those guys that just is like a one-trick pony. I mean, he loves blocking, so that's probably why he's so highly regarded and highly ranked. But kind of a mixture of everything. Certainly, just I cannot put into words how massive this is for FSU's momentum and
Yep.
getting somebody. And you always say, like, I mean, we always give them a thing like, hey, you know, it's about what happens on the visits and it's not about the commitments. But getting commitments is pretty darn big
Yeah.
off a spring game.
Totally. And I rewound, if people noticed, I rewound to a play. There was a goal line block where it was just kind of evil from Thomas
Yeah.
on a defensive back at the high school level. It's just kind of unfair at 6'4", 230 pounds. You can see that there's a little snarl in his game, Michael, and that's good because Florida State's receivers, like a Johnny Wilson, Micah Pittman was the first to bring it to Florida State. That blocking on the perimeter is part of the culture they're trying to build. Seems like beyond the fact that this guy can run some clean routes, he does like to do that as well. But let's pivot forward. You touched on it, the momentum this creates. This weekend, Luke Kromenhawk said, I'm done. I'm shutting it down. That's really good news to have the bell cow quarterback for 2024. Florida State is now up with this flip, Michael, to number 5 in that industry ranking with On3's recruiting class for 2024. They now have a top 5 class. How does this move help them move forward and bring this thing home?
Yeah, I just think it drastically changes because he wasn't one I was counting on at first. I mean, I knew about it for a while, but you're still going against Georgia, and so can they actually? Is it finalized? Yes, but now it's finalized. It's like the momentum is like to the highest level we've ever seen or have seen under the Norvell era. and certainly up there. It feels like the way recruits talk about them.
Yeah.
It reminds me a lot of 2012 when that class was just getting guys nonstop. All it was more like they weren't recruiting, they were selecting because there was so many top tier guys that are coming, and now they still have a lot of them out there. I think you have Charles Lester, who I think is going to be a 5-star eventually. I think they look good there. Jason Zandamela, who visited over the weekend, offensive lineman 4-star. I think that's another one that potentially we'll see this week that they could get good news, but he hasn't really set a timeline. But I think FSU sits in a really good spot. Same thing with 5-star offensive lineman Jonathan Daniels. I feel good about FSU's chances, even though he's going to push it a little bit to December. But I just think the way kids view FSU is something we as media and senior analysts at Warchant and just you have to adjust to, because it's a new thing of listening to kids talk about this program. They're like top 5, but I think they're hotter than fire. I mean, they're just really hot, and I think it all started for me just with Luke and Cam shutting things down. Really, that set the tone for the whole weekend, and I really think those two actions really made the weekend so strong and gave it a little extra juice, because if your two highest commitments aren't like shutting it down, then how can I go there if I don't know if the two highest guys and the two bell cows aren't locked in. So them locking in was really just solidified a lot of guys like, hey, you know what, they're not even listening to anybody else. So that tells you how special this place is. So maybe it's the place I need to go. So I think there's up to 3 or 4 guys that I could see popping. I'm not going to give, I don't know the timeline, but I could see that visit for the spring game that I see in this class. So I think they're on fire, man. I mean, that's the only way I can put it. It's hard to come up with adjectives. Everyone gives me crap because I use the same adjectives sometimes, but it's hard to put into words just what they're doing and what Norvell's doing. And a friend of mine was asking me, kind of earlier today about FSU recruiting, just like what it's like. It it feels like what it was like with Bobby, because Bobby was so good at relationships, and it feels like Mike's putting his little touch on this stuff. And really, it's just the relationships were always there, but now the product and what you do with those players, development, evaluation talent, these guys, they have not missed on much when it comes to evaluations. You know, Marquiston Douglas, Darren Wilmanson, Ja'Kai Douglas. These are all people that, okay, they're 3-stars. Nobody really pushed for, but they're very impactful as far as in this team. Even DJ Lundy, I think, was a 3-star at one point, and these guys are all having a major role in this program. And the fact that these guys are getting developed, I think, speaks a lot to what recruits see and what and how they're being utilized. And then the transfer portal success, I think, is a big deal as well, where high school kids are seeing, okay, these guys are proven they could go anywhere, and they're going to Florida State. So it tells you a lot about their eye of talent, but also the production of what they're doing on the field.
I think what everybody would say is after you made the trip up to South Georgia today, Michael, get in the car and go drive to these other places, these other high schools where these kids that are maybe undecided are thinking about pulling the trigger, because outstanding side work by you today to go get that interview. You can find it. We'll link to it at the end of this video, the one-on-one that Michael did with Landen Thomas announcing that he was making the decision to switch to Florida State. But, Michael, if anybody else is calling you to see a showcase or a workout or whatever, and they got something to tell you, maybe you put that out on Twitter like, hey, guys, this is the high school I'm at today, and we'll see what kind of reaction it gets. But nonetheless, Michael, this is humongous news and a big day for Florida State. More to come. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, more to come. I think the positivity, I don't think is going to slow down. I think it's only beginning. I'm not going to give time frame on things because the only one I knew of was Landon. I had a good feeling based on the contacts I talked to that it was going to be this week. I knew the day, but I didn't want to tell people, because it's like you tell people a day and then it doesn't happen that day. Then people are like, oh, well, it's not going to happen. But I I knew the day, and I knew that it was likely coming this week. So yeah, we'll have it keep cranking. And I think there's going to be more good news down the pipe. I can't give people an exact timeline. I don't know, but certainly if you see me pop up at a school, it's not a bad thing for Florida State.
Well, and here's what you can do in the interim. Hit the like button underneath this video for the good news for Florida State. The top 5 recruiting class now. Let's see if they can advance that. Perhaps climb. I don't know if that's a term they ever use, but climb up towards the top of the rankings. Subscribe to Warchant TV. We'll have you covered every step of the way. And hit that bell. You never know. Sometimes we go live with breaking news like this. So keep it with us. Mike will have you covered in the recruiting front. The transfer portal is active. We got news on Brendan Gant entering the portal today. As the players matriculate into the portal, we'll have news for you as well on warchant.com, Warchant TV. And, of course, we're recording this on a Monday afternoon. Full practice coverage is on the channel. So just mill about, Michael. Everybody, click on Warchant TV. We've got you covered head to toe. And that's the news for now, though, on the recruiting front. It's excellent. So for Michael Langston, the senior recruiting analyst of warchant.com, my name is Tom Lang. Head on over to the site while you're at it. We've got the best coverage in the business. We'll talk to you next time on Warchant TV.